Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. My name is Alex Dvorkin and I'm a managing partner at 4D Capital. Welcome to our new series. It's called Countdown to Armageddon. And if you look at the title of the video, you're going to see how many days we have left before, at least according to our calculation, a nuclear exchange will take place between Russia and China alliance and NATO members. Now, in the description of this video, I have a link to the video where I go into great detail in terms of what cyclical analysis or what mathematical analysis leads us to such a conclusion. And there I'll explain in great detail the stock market cycle associated with this conclusion and the war cycle that is associated with that conclusion as well. And essentially what happens, we have both of those cycles coming together in the summer of 2029, and we come to a conclusion that there's going to be a significant, well, at least according to our understanding at this time, the war has already started. We're just seeing different phases of it, with Iran and Israel, for example, or with Russia and Ukraine. Some of it is kinetic, some of it is not kinetic, but the war has already started, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse as we progress into the future. So one more thing I wanted to mention is that we have an important time juncture associated with this war cycle coming up around December 13th of this year, and it is equivalent to what happened in Pearl Harbor. So some of the events we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be looking at that cycle with an understanding that there's a real good possibility of something really, really bad happening. So we'll be doing hopefully daily commentary, political commentary, geopolitical commentary on the subject matter, and very soon I'm going to add a section where I'm going to start preparing you for not only what's going to happen but how to deal with it. I'm going to be publishing a book within 2 weeks that's going to outline exactly what you need to do in order to survive, and not only survive but prosper. Well, it's a really bad thing to say, not survive and prosper, but basically survive and structure your life in such a way where you and your family can keep going after this atrocious event is going to take place once again in the summer of 2029. So with that in mind, let's just jump into what's going on out there today. Obviously, we talked about Tomahawks yesterday, and the fact that Mr. Trump is still considering supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine. And yesterday, just as today, we talked about it, and it's a really, really bad idea because the Tomahawk missiles can be nuclear tipped, and that creates a huge problem for the conflict between Russia and NATO. I'm not even going to say Ukraine because you very well know, as I do, that the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is a conflict between Russia and NATO. Okay, so once again, when they begin to talk about this, the possibility of that happening, typically it ends up happening if you look over the last couple of years. And once again, this is going to be really, really bad because the reality here is that only Americans can fire those Tomahawk missiles. That's the technology necessary for it. But not only that, the Russians, they have no idea whether those missiles coming in are nuclear tipped or not. So just imagine if it's the same situation for Washington, as we discussed yesterday, where there's a Russian missile coming in and it could be potentially nuclear tipped. What do you do? And that's the same situation that Russia's going to face. And they're getting pretty angry. So if you look at what the Russians are saying, so for example, Russian state TV threatens to bomb NATO country over Tomahawk missiles. So in this particular case, they're talking about Poland. And I fully understand them, but of course, NATO members will come out. Well, an attack on one is an attack on everyone, and that's perhaps exactly what NATO wants from one point of view. It's definitely what Ukraine wants at this point because they want the NATO to come into the war with Russia, and they believe they're going to be able to defeat Russia. But that's not how it's going to work. The way it's going to work is that the war itself is just going to intensify over and over, or get worse and worse and worse. And we've been seeing this progressively happen over the last couple of years. And I'll talk about one of the Paul Craig Roberts articles here in a second, but he's absolutely right. By having a president in Russia who refuses to strike hard, not only at Ukraine, but possibly at some NATO targets, we end up in a situation where it continues to escalate, because the Western powers, the United States, UK, who are the primary drivers behind this war in Ukraine, they see it as Russia has an inability to enforce its red line, right? So from their perspective, from the perspective of the intelligence agencies, their conclusion is, well, let's just keep pushing. Let's keep pushing with this, with that, with new weapons, with provocations, because in our opinion, Russia is not going to do anything. And if we push long enough and strong enough, at some point Russia is going to break. And to a certain extent, they're absolutely correct in this assumption. Russia and Russian populace are getting tired of this war. I have an ability to watch Russian media. I'm fluent in Russian, and because of that, I can see that people are getting pretty fed up. They're getting fed up with a slow pace of this particular war, and they want it to be done with. But for some reason, we can argue about what those reasons are, the Russian government, and Putin in particular, are hell-bent on not inflaming the relationship with NATO or the West any more than it has already, right? So they're just sitting there and they're taking punches. But from our perspective, and from the perspective of Paul Kirk Roberts as well, this is a really, really bad idea, because the Americans and the British and the Europeans, they will not stop. They will continue to push until they cannot push anymore, unless there's such a strong and powerful strike back. And this is what they're talking about here, possibly not necessarily nuking Poland, but perhaps sending a couple of Oreshnik missiles into Polish territory to kind of snap them out of it, right? But I'm not sure if that's going to work, because once again, the Americans and the Europeans, and I can not the Europeans, but the American and the British, they could care less about the whole continent or EU bloc. Let's put it that way, right? So yeah, it's a really, really bad situation. The West just going to keep pushing. Russia's not going to do anything until it's too late, until we get to the point where Russian survival or Russia's survival is in question, and at that point in time, nuclear weapons fly. Now, we are still a bit off from that point of time, as our projections indicate, but that's exactly what's going to happen as we move on, okay? And let's see, EU backs shooting down Russian planes. You know, nothing new. I mean, the entire European Union, NATO bloc is itching for war. They want Russia. They want to divide Russia. They want to take its resources, and that's the real reason for the war. Everybody knows it. Nobody talks about it, but it's not going to happen. I mean, before Russia collapses, some nuclear weapons will crisscross the oceans, right? So. And we know when exactly that's going to happen. Let's see what else. Yeah, this is the Paul Kirk Roberts article I was talking about. It looks like there will be war that resolves the conflict between the West and Russia. I absolutely agree. This is what we talked about here just a few moments ago. Basically, as the West continues to push, as the West continues to believe that Russia will not enforce its red lines, and so far they've been correct, they believe that by pushing and pushing and pushing, eventually Russia will collapse. And they're going to be able to come in, they're going to be able to take over the resources, they're going to be able to divide Russia, and that's going to be the end of it. But this is a very, very dangerous game to play, because eventually we're going to get to the point, and that's what Paul Kirk Roberts talks here, or mentions here. Eventually we're going to get to the point where there's going to be kinetic war between Russia and NATO, And once that war starts, it's pretty much going to be next to impossible to start. And the foregone conclusion is that eventually there's going to be a losing side, and eventually the losing side will use nuclear weapons. And once that happens, both sides use the nuclear weapons, right? And that's the end of it. That's the Armageddon that the Bible talks about. And once again, the counter at the bottom of this video indicates how many days we have left before that happens. Now, there's a certain margin of error associated with it. It could happen a little bit sooner, it could happen a little bit later, a couple of months, but overall, I believe our forecast is very accurate, and you can listen to the original videos of why that is, why those cycles converge. Another important news, of course, is the ceasefire in Gaza. Now, I always look at the whole thing with a very skeptical eye. There are two things to consider here. Number one, I believe Trump is hell-bent on getting this Nobel Prize. It's a complete joke, but nevertheless, that's something that the man wants, and perhaps that's something he's going to get. I believe they announce the prize tomorrow, or nominations tomorrow, doesn't really matter. So I think the timing of this particular deal has been structured to position Trump to get this Nobel Prize. So the dealings that they've had and the negotiations that they have had with various fractions in Syria, in Iran, where they bombed and killed them shortly thereafter, leads us to the conclusion that this is going to be something very, very similar. I don't believe in this particular peace deal because Israel has a very clear strategy of greater Israel, and that includes taking over Gaza and getting those people out, unfortunately. We definitely do not support that, or Israel in any fashion, let me just mention that. But that will not stop. They have the entirety of support of the United States government at this particular juncture, and they're not going to stop. So this ceasefire, from my perspective, is going to be very short-lived. Maybe very short-lived, maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, perhaps a couple of months, but eventually they'll trigger something where they want to come in and get those people out of there. Whether or not they're going to be successful is an entirely different matter. And there's another very important point to consider, and the point is Israel is stretched to the max, and there are certain indicators that suggest that perhaps they want another round with Iran. So there are quite a few sources suggesting that there's a significant buildup of weapons that will be used to trigger the secondary war with Iran. To concentrate on that, Israel needs to pull out of Gaza. They've suffered significant casualties. They were not able to achieve anything. As a matter of fact, you can argue that this is a significant victory for Gaza and Hamas. I know that Israelis will debate that and say it's the opposite of that, but it doesn't really matter. This particular conflict is just going to continue going forward. You can bet your bottom dollar on that, so to speak. But yeah, so you kind of have, in this particular situation, you kind of have to read between the lines and assume that this is only temporary, and perhaps the reason for it being temporary is an anticipated strike on Iran that will turn into a much greater war, not only for Israel, but perhaps for the United States, because Trump has indicated that perhaps next time the United States is going to get involved. So this is something very interesting, or this is something to watch over the next couple of weeks. Remember, one point we made yesterday and talked about earlier today is this December 13th time juncture that is associated with a very important war cycle time point of December 7th, 1941, which is Pearl Harbor, and the official date of the United States entering the World War II. So I talked about this cycle in the past many times. Just going to mention, last time it hit earlier this year is June 22nd of this year. And if you recall, 84 years earlier, June 22nd of 1941 is when Germany invaded Russia and really kicked off World War II. Before that, it was more or less simmering, but when that invasion happened, that's when World War II really kicked off, you can argue. So a very important point to watch. We believe something's going to happen. Yesterday we talked about two possibilities. Something with Iran is one of them, but we believe it's going to be something with Russia, where perhaps there's going to be an attempted decapitation strike by NATO against Russia. For those of you watching in Russia, let the government know, I guess. I'm sure they have much better intelligence than me. And when that decapitation fails, there's going to be a significant response, perhaps even a nuclear response on some of the NATO countries located in Europe. And if that happens, then the US markets will experience quite a bit of volatility and collapse to a certain extent. And I would be inclined to go that way as opposed to anything happening in Iran, because Iran is a much smaller fish, and typically whether or not they're successful in launching a massive attack on Israel or even some of the bases, United States bases in the region, it will not move the markets as much as the volatility index that I talked about yesterday suggests. So this is something to watch. This is going to be very interesting. Hopefully nothing happens. Hopefully my forecast fails. But nevertheless, this is a very, very important time juncture to watch that can essentially confirm our overall war forecast that of a nuclear exchange between China and Russia. Let's see what's next. So yeah, this I don't even know what to call this person, but Zelensky says Ukraine will nominate Trump for Nobel Peace Prize if he sends Tomahawk missiles. So yes, this is so warped that it just boggles the mind. So Trump, send us the Tomahawk missiles, we'll shoot them at Russia. Russia will believe it's nuclear tip and will nuke the entirety of NATO, and NATO will nuke the Russia back, and the world as we know it ends. But Mr. Trump, you can have the peace prize, right? So this is the line of thinking for this deranged mass murderer that you see on the screen, who is responsible for killing over 1 million Ukrainians, of his own people, of Russian Orthodox people fighting against brother. So this is the bloodthirsty piece of shit, excuse my language, that wants to nominate Trump, who is perhaps not much better for a peace prize that is soaked in blood. Fascinating world we live in, don't we? It's just the gaslighting, the warping of reality is just on the next level. It's just, and the thing is, most people believe this kind of stuff. They see this, and they don't have the analytical background to understand exactly what's happening behind the scenes, and they believe this person is fighting for freedom and liberty, while he's killing millions and millions of people and lining his own pockets. Anyway, on the next subject. So going back to finance, Jamie Dimon is essentially coming out, is saying to expect economic trouble. You can essentially see very clearly the economy is kind of coming apart. And if you look at the stock market, obviously you're not going to see any of that. We're sitting at all-time highs. Our financial analysis kind of explains that and projects exactly what that top is going to be. It's going to come in very soon, and then we're going to decline quite substantially into the next year, which is perhaps going to be associated with that December time turning point. I talked about something big happening and the stock market just cratering, I should say, just as it did when COVID hit within a relatively short period of time. So this is something interesting. Everybody knows that AI is coming for all the jobs. By the way, I'm playing with AI. I've been working with AI a couple of months, and I'm amazed by the technology. I witnessed the internet age coming to life, and this is more powerful. This is better than internet. And I'm not the only one saying that. Bezos said that yesterday. Many other people are saying that as well. And believe me, within 5 years, it's going to take everybody's job. And being a plumber, being an electrician, is not going to save you, because they're going to have robotics at that point in time, and all they're going to do is they're going to upload the AI into those robotic platforms, and they're going to do much better jobs in roofing, in construction, in plumbing, and everything else than you can imagine. So my projection, in 5 years, everybody's going to lose their job, because what I can accomplish with AI right now, as a business owner, I no longer have to hire any people. It's all automatic. And what I can do within a few minutes, that's, well, let me put it this way. Employees that I have, I can replicate what they do in the entirety of their day within a relatively short period of time. Like literally 5 minutes. I can automate everything and have AI do everything. And it takes 5 minutes as opposed to paying somebody else full-time wage. So, and perhaps that's the answer for the nuclear war. I mean, the people in power are taking a look, and they're trying to decide, well, crap, in a couple of years, 50% of people, in 3 years, 50% of people out there not going to have a job. In 5 years, 80% of people not going to have a job. So what are we going to do with this population? And perhaps that's exactly what they want. They want this war with Russia, and eventually that war is going to turn nuclear. And you know the date, which is once again in the description of this video. So yeah, I mean, the economy, we're in a speculative bubble. I talked about this yesterday. We are dealing with the stock market, which has been the most expensive market in history. And typically when that happens, we have a crash. And that's exactly what our projections indicate for the overall stock market. We have 30-day free trial with our service. Click on the link below as well. You can request it, no problems, no credit cards, no strings attached, none of that. And we'll go from there. And finally, let's see what we have for the final. So Britain faces winter gas shortages, according to Financial Times. My only comment is it couldn't happen to the nicer people. The UK has been the driving force behind this war in Ukraine, this war between NATO and Russia. And they continue to push and push and push, and eventually that's going to turn it once again into a nuclear war. So, you know, hopefully they freeze. That's all I have to say about that. That's it for today. Thank you very much for your time. We'll be back with another update tomorrow. Bye-bye.